Rhett will get us mics. I'm going to move this. Yeah, you can go. There's stairs right over there. Let's see. How would be the best way to do this? Where we could maybe see. This is all definitely two in the way. Okay. All right. Here we go. All right, and then okay. Okay, there we go. You get that one. Okay, are we all in the shot? All right, well, I'm really excited about this. So speaking of things that were postponed because of ice, we didn't get to do this parent panel back about a month ago because of the first ice days. And just kind of where we were that day was Amy had just preached on honoring our parents, and this was going to kind of be the follow-on to that, and we were really excited, and so we were able to sort of get it rescheduled, and that's sort of what we're following on to tonight, and I'll comment on that in a second. But I want to just briefly introduce the three people who are here with me. So this is Joshua Colley, and his daughter Mega's in our ministry right now. She is up here tonight. And Ronnie Worsham is my dad. And a lot of you may be familiar with him. And then Paula Hayes is Rhett's mom over there. And I really wanted to get just some different perspectives. They've all been through this experience of being a parent of a college student, and to varying degrees on the other side of that. Paula obviously is going to bring more of a mother's point of view than these two men, and I really wanted that. I think that's important to get to hear from both sides of this. Ronnie has definitely done not only this as personally, but has been on the sort of counseling side of this transition with both students and their parents for a lot of years, and has seen a lot of those things and can kind of speak to it from a pastor's point of view. And I'm really excited to have Joshua because I think there are a whole extra set of issues that come when there's an immigrant family and there's different cultures kind of coming together, and it just adds complexity. So I'm excited to hear from each one of them and the unique perspectives that they bring. The goal tonight, and part of why we have these different perspectives, is because we don't think this honoring father and mother is some one-size-fits-all thing. It's just we're dealing with people and the complexity of people. The command is for all of us. The principle is for all of us. What that looks like and how that plays out, we're all trying to figure out, given our own context. And the New Testament, as we've talked about with each of these sermons, takes us further. So certainly the New Testament re-emphasizes the idea of honor your father and mother as being something very important. Jesus talks about it. But it also, like it does on so many other things, doesn't really let anyone off the hook, because Paul will say, honor one another above yourselves. And we've got to all figure out, regardless of what this is, how do we honor people? But what does that look like appropriately, given that we don't play the same roles in each other's lives? What does it look like for a child to honor their parents, for an adult to honor their parents, for a parent to honor their children who are still children, for a parent to honor their children who are now adults? We're all trying to figure that out. And so our goal with this is that maybe it can start some great conversations between you and your parents. All of this is being streamed and then recorded. And so we just hope we can use it as a resource. So with that said, I want to start with a question that I'd like each of you to answer briefly, or at whatever length you want. But I would like to hear from each of you is, what is it like as a parent going through this transition where your son or daughter is moving from a child dependent on you to an adult not dependent on you? Because I think one of the values of this is to maybe learn to have some empathy for our parents, because it's easy to sort of consider things from our own point of view and not see the other. So whoever wants to go for it.
Personally, for me, it was a mixture of feelings. I think I was joyful and excited for the experiences that they were going to have. I was concerned about some of the trials and temptations that they would face. And I was really sad because it was closing a chapter in my life. And I'd been really involved in our son's schools, and especially with Rhett's, helped with a lot of his plays, and he was on JV and varsity basketball. And so I drove him and several boys all over the Metroplex to go to games, and it was really hard. I was sad. In fact, I think Rhett got a little taste of it once. Our oldest, we had just dropped off in College Station, and I had headphones on, and I was at home, and I was just crying like crazy, and I was cleaning the house, and Rhett comes home and comes up behind me and taps me on the shoulder, and I'm sure I was listening to whatever the latest rap album was that he told me about last week. So, he taps me on the shoulder, and I turn around, and just tears rolling down my face, and he said, "Is it Ryan?" Because we had just dropped him off that week, and I said, "Yes." So it's harder than you realize, I think.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's different for every parent. I can tell you that. It's different for moms and dads. I would encourage you as students, and this is one of the things I wish I'd known to really encourage my kids to do, is to go ask your parent how it feels you leaving. Your parents it'll amaze you what they would tell you if you ask. It's kind of hard to go just push that off on your kid, but if one of my kids asks me about something, then it feels good to talk to them about it. And then ask them the second question is, what can you do to help it be the easiest it can be? Because it just depends on your parents. And I know my wife and I are consummate parents. I'm very strategic minded. For those of you that know me, know that I've been planning to have kids since I was a little boy. I was the youngest of 8 kids, so I watched 7 leave home, and I can tell you I had that experience a little bit. Then my mom died when I was 11, and there were still 4 of us home. So I lived in a little small house out in southern Oklahoma with 10 people, and I watched 8 of them leave, 4 brothers. And when they left, they went to college, they never came back. Most of them got married early, and it was heartbreaking. So with my kids, I planned to make it as easy as possible. But here's the deal. For all those years, your life, or as parents, our lives revolve around you. We've planned, we don't do anything without thinking about you. We can't go to the restroom without thinking about our kids. And sometimes you can't go to the restroom without your kids in there with you. And your whole life revolves around them. And as they leave one at a time, you just kind of wake up and our lives are completely different. It's like suddenly we've got to find, a new north, so to speak. What are we going to do now? Thankfully, we knew that, but a lot of your parents don't know that. And their life is gutted for a while. And they don't want to tell you that probably, but a lot of what you feel, this tugging and the weirdness in them, is them just trying to grapple with this.
For me, it was scary, extremely scary. Mega was our oldest. My little girl, when she was going to school, this was the time when every time I switched on TV to hear a sermon, the theologians were alerting or talking about how these big schools built on the foundations of Christianity is filled with so-called intellectuals fighting their tooth and nail to bring a different point of view to the world. It was scary for me to send my kid to school, let alone UTD is known to be a Christian school at all. Mm-hmm. It's just convenient for us, and we are glad that she decided to come here. Mm-hmm. And we're glad that she chose focus and a family. An extended family was built very quickly. But it was that's exactly how I felt when she left home for school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate you guys kind of bringing out the two different sides of that, sort of the sadness, the reorienting of your own life, and then the fear of like everything that I've invested and built, now I'm not in control of that anymore. I was able to sort of control some of those things. And I remember that, moving on campus at UTD, I think I was completely oblivious to my parents' emotions, and didn't I was excited and looking forward, and they were really sweet and acted excited, but then I remember when one of my younger siblings moved out, I got to see how sad they were, and I was like, oh, that's what it was like for them in that. And I think, as he was saying about just being aware, I wish I could have been more aware of that, and more sensitive to that through that season. So yeah, thank you guys for sharing that. I'm going to do these questions in slightly different order. So when it's done well, how do you think this parent-child relationship evolves as your child becomes an adult? Like, what are when you think what done right looks like, what are you looking for? What do you want it to be?
I'm not going first every time.
No, you don't
Is
have
that-
to.
Okay. I think you kind of transition from training to more advising,
Mhm.
gentle advising. And then I think over time, it's a relationship of mutual respect.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
I see the roles kind of reverse at some point of time. I go to Mega for some advices now, and she holds me back on certain things. Praise God for that wisdom that God has given her. Now I'm glad that as she grows up, she went into that advisory position for me.
Mm-hmm.
It may be just unique for me, but that's something can happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could talk a long time about that, and that scares anybody that knows me. But let me just say, for parents that might be listening, when your kids are young, I would put the word controlling. You really do, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean you've really got to manage your kids well and teaching them about life and just the simple things, but all the while giving them more and more range. There's this principle of tagging up with kids that when they're real young, they're kind of right in your lap. And as they mature, they will go a little farther away, but then they'll come back and kind of stand by you. And then they'll go again. And they do that more and more. And you watch that in the animal kingdom, but there's a tagging up. And you'll feel the need to do that the rest of your life. You'll see your parents go back to the old home place and just kind of stand around. There's kind of a tagging up to say, this was real. This is where I grew up. I didn't make this up. It's not a dream. So, but as children move into junior high and then high school, it's more containment. You've got to give them more room, but you've got to contain what that room is, and prepare them to go out. Talk to them about it. What does this look like? I told my kids early on, you're going to go to community college. We moved intentionally to this area. I was called to help drive campus ministry, so I knew a lot about it. I was converted in campus ministry, and so I knew Collin College was one of the best community colleges in the country right here. So I said, if you don't get a scholarship, then you're going to go, and it really is. That's just the truth. You're going to go to Collin College. But if you get a scholarship, you can go to UTD. Brandon got a scholarship to UTD and came right here, moved on. So they knew exactly what we were going to do. And then I always said, but if you've got a better deal, I'll entertain it. And so there there was a lot of that. So I would say the next thing is compelling, because now you've got to kind of shove them out, as painful as that is, and let them go and encourage them to go. I appreciated the investing in the vision today, because you've got to teach your kids to go and show them how to go. And this is a very confusing time for most families, and frankly, it's often done poorly. Mm-hmm. And the parents aren't trying to do it poorly. Where are you supposed to learn this? What class in school teaches you this? What church teaches you this? We just haven't done well. That's part of the reason the Christian church is losing 75% of their kids when they go to college. We're not doing this well. We're not preparing them. We're not planning. So controlling, containing, and compelling. And I'll just leave those three words there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think those are some helpful words. I thought what Paula said, use the word transition, which I think both gives this sense of it takes place over time. It's not an immediate thing, though sometimes it is more. You know, if you send your kid off to another state, all right, like there's a lot less control or influence than if they're just down the street or still in your home. But regardless, transitions are stressful. Like there's just no way around that in any area of life. You know, it's like transitions are stressful. And I think sometimes that takes us off guard when it's like, this doesn't feel very good. It's like, yes, because you're in transition. All the comfort is out the window. And I think when we realize that, we can sort of accept it and move on and try and deal with it. I love the term, Joshua used of mutual respect, and then Ronnie used the word listening, because I think that is that's the goal. And one of the things that I think as I've gotten to speak with some students and parents about this transition, especially if they're struggling over the years, is that I'll ask them, what do you want this to look like in 5 or 10 years? Like, let's get out of this whatever current conflict we're in and think, where do we want to be? And is what we're doing moving in that direction? Or are we stuck in the past? Or are we, looking backwards? And so, yeah, I love that image of, I want to be in a place of mutual respect. I want to be a place where as my child grows and learns things that I don't know, I could learn that from them. But I also want to be in a place where they still realize there's always going to be things I know that they don't know. and I want them to be interested in hearing that from me. So yeah, that's a neat picture. So what do you think are some of the pitfalls of this transition when it's not done well? Whether that's just from, I know you all have your own personal experience, but you've also watched your friends and just even what's going on in the culture. What do you think are some of the pitfalls? You don't all have to answer, but if you have some, share.
Yeah, I've done tons of counseling on this one. It is hard. Again, it's hard because every parent's different and every kid's different. So this is not a formula, and we have to be very careful about being prescriptive. Each kid probably needs a little bit of something different or a lot, and parents need something different. But the two biggest problems with any transition is when the old leaders, i.e. here the parents, try to hold power too long. They don't give up power. They don't empower. And then the second part is when the one supposed to be taking the power doesn't do that well. They drop the baton. So on both sides, you've got to be prepared, and parents have to give up power. And that's why with kids, you're a controller, and then you're a coach. And then you have to redefine that relationship as an adult to what works. And I know there's some more questions on here, but those are the two things, is we just don't want to give up control. And I tell people they're gonna cut that cord on you if you don't give them some more rope here and empower them. That's why I taught my kids, go make a new mistake. Just don't repeat the ones we've made. You're going to make mistakes. And then the other thing is, if you mess up, call us. If you mess up really bad, call us really fast. You know, because you want to know that they really mess up, that you're going to be the people that are going to show up and protect them and take care of them, rather than them feeling like they've got to hide something. And sometimes students don't want to do that because their parents are going to pitch a fit and they're worried about what they're going to say rather than the other.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that image before someone else shares of this transfer of power. Because I even think, I don't know, you know, where we talk about this even politically, there's like a peaceful transfer of power. And then there are coups and rebellions, and it can be, and there's a lot less damage done in peaceful transfers of power. But that requires both sides to do something. There has to be a letting go, a transition, a plan, and then and a taking up of that baton, and it can go poorly.
Can I tell a quick story?
Yeah.
When my second son, which I love to tell Cale stories, he's one of the best guys in the world, but to just say there's a difference in kids, when he went to college, he was going to Collin, and I'd say, Cale, let me help you enroll. Well, he had this little girlfriend who had flunked out of school that was his advisor. And so they wait till the last minute to go to Collin, and he has this awful schedule, and he had to learn the hard way. And he did. But I said, Kel, I've been doing campus ministry for years. I've got nearly 4 degrees. Let me help you. And he finally let me help. He brought it after that next time. He said, I'll never do that again. And so he let me help him from then on.
Yeah.
But that's part of that transition. I handed the baton to him and he dropped it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it cost him.
Yeah.
It cost him.
Yeah.
Yeah. One pitfall that we as parents can fall into is that thinking sometimes that we don't have any influence over this young child already into that stage of like growing and becoming an adult. I like the way that you put it, that put the boundaries as they are, like, and still let them be free in that. If parents do feel that there is something need to be communicated, do not hesitate to communicate. However hard it is, however painful it is, even if it brings both of you to tears, if it is such an important thing, especially with our beliefs, our core beliefs, do communicate with that. That is something that I wanted to bring up, that do not hesitate at all. It is painful, but there's no one else can tell them these hard things. Of course, they have their peers, they have their randoms in their lives, but nothing.
If they're lucky. No, sure.
But nothing like a dad or mom.
Yeah.
Please do speak up and then tell them.
Yeah. Any other pitfalls you guys want to highlight? Great. Well, I want to throw in the topic of money, because I think money is a complicated one in this whole transition to independence. And, you know, for some students, you know, and we're seeing in our culture, people are sort of staying on the parent payroll long after college, or they're living with their parents, maybe not even offering to help pay the rent or anything like that. And others maybe got a full ride to school and they're relatively independent, you know, at 18. But how does money sort of stir into this? And I certainly have seen a lot of parents, you know, it is one of the levers we can still, you know, pull. That doesn't necessarily make it wise to always use that lever. So I don't know. What do you want to add about that?
Our experience may be a little bit different because we had some financial setbacks when our oldest was ready to go to college. And so it wasn't an option for him to live on campus all 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what played into our situation, is maybe the kids couldn't become independent quite as fast as they wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that God's in control of this, and what seemed like a hard time and a pitfall, he used, because he knew where the money needed to be at the right time. He provided it at the right time. he knew which kid needed to be out at the right time, and it just works out. Cover it in prayer. Just really cover it in prayer.
Yeah, one of the things I see, and I've even seen some articles about this lately, is I think kids are unrealistic sometimes about their parents' finances because you're not necessarily in the same financial place as each kid graduates high school. And so there's like, well, that's unfair. You did this or you didn't do this. And sometimes you're just sort of limited, and you're learning, as Ronnie was saying, like it's hard to learn this stuff, and who's teaching it. And so, yeah, I think having some grace even for our parents as they're trying to navigate, all of that. But anything else you guys want to add in terms of money?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that I could say about that. Again, it's the same thing. Parents don't talk to their kids about money, about the realities of money. There's all these secrets around money.
Yeah.
It's the same with sex. It's like, we think our parents had sex the number of kids they've got. And, we're just prudish about all this. And it's, and you think, I don't want to think about it. I don't want to think about it. Well, you don't have to think about it a lot, but you need to deal with reality. This is because you've got to think about it in your own life, about what this looks like. And, different families have different means, and it's just what we got. But I programmed my kids, we're not going to school on debt. I did have to borrow money to go to school a little bit, but I paid it back in a big hurry. Debt in going to school is a pretty terrible idea, especially in this day and age. You say, well, I'm going to go be a doctor. You hope you're going to go be a doctor. I know people that thought they were going to go be a doctor and end up being a teacher, but they borrowed a bunch of money to go be a doctor and they didn't make it. One of my friends went to medical school back 35 years ago, and he walked away from there with $120,000 in debt, and it took him a long time to pay it off. So we programmed our kids that. And Brandon's right. When Brandon started to school, number one, he had a full ride. And so I didn't have to spend a lot of money on him. But, we provided a car and insurance and backed him up. And then when he got out of school, we gave him the rest of that money, and he bought a house with it. So each one of them were different, but they deregulated.
Down payment on a house with it.
Yes, that's an important explanation. No, we couldn't do that. But yeah, but they deregulated tuition in Texas, and from the time the other three went, we had three in college at the same time. But my wife went back to work and taught for a few years, and I did consulting concurrent with ministry. We pedaled real hard. The kids worked and did things, but they were great about it. But you got to talk. You got to move your feet and talk to each other. You need to talk to your parents about the realities of their financial situation, what's realistic, and you need to encourage them to talk to you. And if they're acting a certain way, you think, well, they're just being selfish. No, they may be broke. Yeah. Sometimes people have financial issues that come up. They've lost jobs. There's things you don't know about. And they would love to just pay your way through school, but they can't. And it's expensive. So ask them, talk to them. We negotiated. I can go along with this, but I can't go along with that. So if you do that, you're going to be on your own. But I did tell them, if you get a credit card and while you're in college and I find out, I will cut you off completely. You will not borrow money. You will not use credit at all, or we will cut you off. And they knew I meant that because I didn't want them. These credit card companies were on campus going nuts back then, probably still are. So talk about it.
Okay. Thank you for asking that question. Unfortunately, I don't have an input into it, but I'm learning as I sit here. I'm thankful that Mega took a decision to stay in a school which pays for her, and the burden is light, like you recommended. But I did not think beyond that. I was like, oh, okay, she took right decision and she's going to make right decisions. But for parents, it can be like, You may be like me, when your child is already junior and you don't know that you need to take a few steps to teach them these responsibilities. Of course, having 100K plus debt and then walking away from a school is scary and not a right thing for a kid to do. Loans are not really a fun things for the kids, even though the first thing that schools send you is that this is the loan that you can take. It surprises me all the time that this is a loan. You're not doing anything in this. You're just telling me to take a loan. These are the things that I think we need to talk to our kids, and absolutely, I'm going to start that now.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'll ask students a lot of times just questions around what does giving look like in your parents' lives, and some people really know that, and some people have just sort of picked up hints of that and they've never talked about it, and some people are like, I don't have the faintest idea. And so and yeah, I'll often just, why don't you ask, like, you're trying to figure out how to be an adult and how to manage money, and you got to figure out who your examples are. And I think a lot of times, because we've never talked about it, we don't ever start talking about it. But whether you're a parent looking at your, now adult child, or an adult child looking at your parent, it's probably a good time to start having some of those conversations and see what you can learn and share with each other.
Can I say something
Yeah.
there? It will mean the world to your parents for you to take an interest in them.
Yeah.
Ask them what the high point of their life is. Ask them what the low point was. Ask them what the financial struggles. Ask them what keeps them awake at night. Start treating them like humans, and you will start ministering to them. I baptized my dad just before he turned 70. He was not a Christian. He was far from it my whole life, and it's because I got out and I started talking to my dad, and I asked him one time, I said, Dad, who sexually abused you growing up? Because I knew that had happened. And it was like there was this long hesitation. He didn't tell me, but he told me some stuff. And it was amazing what I found out. But I could tell it meant a lot to him that I took an interest in his life and what they did when they were young, and what life was like.
Yeah.
So do that with your parents, and it'll amaze you how much they'll start talking to you. Don't expect the first time, but don't interrupt. Listen to them. Really listen to them.
Yeah, that's good. I think one of the challenges that probably comes up with everyone at some point is that as we start exercising more independence, we make some decisions that our parents don't agree with. It's not the call they would make. And then I think from a parent point of view, it's kind of this, all right, am I gonna go to war over this? Am I gonna try and control this? Sometimes that's maybe the right call, or am I gonna support them in their adult? It's all right, it's your call to make, but you're gonna bear those consequences. Or I don't know. How do you think through whether to support your student in a decision you don't agree with?
Well, the approach we've taken is my husband and I would discuss it, and then we would usually tell our kids what we thought. We would explain observations we've made that had concerns for us, and then we would let them choose. And if they made a poor choice, and they suffer the consequences. But the entire time, we are praying like crazy.
Yeah, that's helpful.
As parents were advised by Paul in Ephesians 6th chapter, do not anger your children. Some of these discussions for parents, even though those decisions they make, you would not agree with at all, and you can see down the line it is going to be a major pitfall. You say what is in your mind, but do not fight for it. I've seen such situations where I'm angering my kid by telling my viewpoint, and then I just say my viewpoint and then sit. That is sometimes the wisest thing to do. for a parent.
Get advice. Young people, get advice. Parents, get advice. Talk to people. I'm just stunned at how ignorant people are about the most important things. I will do marriage counseling and I'll ask husbands, have you ever read a book on women? No. Have you ever listened to a tape or a sit? No. And the same thing with women. I said, God has given you responsibility for this person of the opposite sex, and you would put more energy into your computer than you would this. When you value people, they become more valuable. And it's investing in them. And that's what God does. The gospel says God values us. This is how much, max. He maxed out on us. So, and the same with parents. It's not taught anywhere, but it's not that nobody knows. Even if you just talk to parents that have just been through it, it can be really helpful. But for some reason, we kind of bleed in secret. But my principle was, I'm going to weigh into the degree that I'm responsible for it. So if I'm supporting you and if there's a risk in it and I'm bearing responsibility, then I'm going to weigh into that. If you want to make a decision outside of that, then we're going to have to renegotiate our giving deal here. And so, that's a deal I made with all of my kids, and we just kind of negotiated that. And so, you've just got to, you've got to give them freedom, but with that said, figure it out, negotiate a deal, and then if a kid wants to do something, you're going to have to let them do it. You've got to turn loose of them. Again, and trust them in that. And yeah.
Joshua, could you speak to some of the additional challenges of just, an immigrant family where you have a child who's raised in America, but you have values from your culture of origin that are really important to you too. Could you add into some of that?
Yes, of course, there are. Am I audible?
Yeah, I think so.
There are certain values that I value a lot from the place that I came from. At the same time, there is a reason I'm here. I value America, USA a lot, especially Texas even more. The people, once I was talking to my father-in-law, and then I was telling him that there's a lot of sin in the world now. There are a lot of things that you hear on the TV. It's almost like even before Mega was born. There are a lot of things happening. It looks like God is going to show his anger on us. And then he said, in this country, there are still a lot of people on their knees praying for the country. That's exactly why God continued to show mercy upon him. And praise God for those people. And praise God for you guys want to invest your life into these like completely unknown people walking through the doors of these schools, and they need a place, a godly place to kind of root them. And I do recognize that that's where I'm standing. That's where my kids are. Yeah. The values that are important for me are, of course, the values that are coming in conflict with the world right now. The values of the families. And quite frankly, we are not much better than USA at all. India is also going through the same situations of like family conflicts and separations, divorces, and the all these sinful nature of the human beings that actually happening there too. So I do recognize that the world is not like, just because I came from India, there's a little bit better than that, better there. there are the values as I grew up are completely different than now. The time difference is, of course, there.
Mm-hmm.
There are the different expectations from the kids to parents and parents to kids at the time. That changed a little bit. That I think some of them I wish stayed as such, but I have no control on those.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the time thing is an interesting comparison because we all maybe have that. Well, when I was growing up, we blank blank blank, and so we're all sort of bringing and we kind of gloss over the past sometimes, just like we can gloss over like, well, back in India, and we pretend it's better than it is. No, we all face challenges. We all live in this broken, sinful world, and we just have to navigate those things. And I think the more we can have grace for each other in that, the better. Well, we started all of this with this idea of honoring parents. And I thought Amy did a great job of kind of saying, the scripture tells everyone to honor their parents. And then in the New Testament, it adds this: children need to obey their parents. And she said, but what does this look like to move from a child who obeys to an adult who honors? And so I wanted to ask the question to you, each of you, just what's something that's been meaningful to you that has made you feel honored as a parent? Because that might give some ideas, to some of our students here of ways to honor their parents in a practical sense.
At a really low point in my life, one of my adult sons wrote me a Mother's Day poem. And it was beautiful, and it was honoring, and it was encouraging. And it was like I was listening to the voice of God. It was such a perfect time. I needed that so badly. And it was just something he did just out of love. And that really honored me a lot.
That's really neat.
The moments when Mega wants to worship with you guys, wants to work with it, and prioritizes her core group being with the focus over other activities is honoring to me. This is how we lived our lives. We prioritized our lives around being in the church and serving and everything. If she's following that, I see that is the highest form of honoring us. She just respects what we did and doing the same thing.
That's neat.
Again, I could say a whole lot. I've got 4 great kids. They've been super to us. One of the parenting principles I teach: if you'll want to be with your kids when they're little, they'll want to be with you when they're big. And we love being with our kids. And Tana's an only child, and so she and I kind of balanced each other out in terms of little family and big family. But so I would say that our kids, if we want to be with them, they'll make time for us, and they've all chosen to live around here and do ministry. But I think that's the number one thing. I think it's important for parents to not parent selfishly. Most people live selfish lives. It's all about me. It's my life. Well, the reality is it's not your life. You were born for God. You were born a soldier to be in the kingdom of God, in the family of God. And God gives you a choice to disown that. But parents raise their kids for themselves, and they teach the kids to be selfish. Parents, you raise your kids for God. They're God's. They're God's. And young people, your parents are God's. They're not your parents first. They're God's people. And they've got a life, and you need to invest in them, not first as your parents like you own them. Invest them in as human beings that have invested hugely in you. These have been your primary support, people that would have died for you, that have made sacrifice you don't even have a clue about. These are people that cried and prayed over you when you were asleep. We used to go in our kids' rooms. I would get in the middle of the night and go pray for my kids. And so when they're out there doing the deal, it's like, oh my gosh, So just remember that. we're God's. And so treat them that way. Because if you think they're your parents, you might diminish their value. But if you treat them as God's children, suddenly that changes the way you perceive them. And again, vice versa.
Well, and that kind of leads just the final question I would say is do you have any other advice you want to give to students or any other advice you want to give to parents? Just wisdom that something we didn't cover or anyone? Yeah.
Get me out of the way. Brandon gave me a book a few years ago now, written by the guy that wrote Ragamuffin Gospel, and he said he said he felt led by the Spirit to get it for me, and so if somebody does that, I take that from God and I sat it there. And what's that guy's name? I forgot.
Brennan Manning.
Yeah, Manning. He was a priest and a pastor, but he was also an alcoholic, and it was kind of his memoir, is what it is. But the title is All Is Grace. And I was going to just read it over a few days. It's not a real long book. And 4 hours later, and a lot of tears, I put it down and finished it. And it was like, wow. And it really summarized a lot of what I've learned, because I grew up in a very judgmental, legalistic home in a lot of ways. And I had to kind of learn the grace of God and the Spirit of God. And so just this idea of grace and what it really means and what it doesn't mean. And honestly, it is. The most important thing is that we have a lot of grace. And grace doesn't first mean mercy or compassion. It means gift. We got to be giving. But you just need to be very forgiving of your parents. They're just humans. And they probably didn't get much instruction on raising you. One of the most important things I had to learn is my dad gave us a heck of a lot better than he got. And when I did that, it's like suddenly it's like, it's okay just to forgive them. It's just okay. That's the right thing to do. And the same thing, parents with kids. It's this, just remember what it's like being a teenager and a college student and trying to think, what am I going to do the rest of my life? And who am I going to marry? Or how am I going to marry? And am I have kids? And, these are huge decisions, and we need to have a huge measure of grace and compassion and understanding. That's what I would say on both sides. So when your parents are stressed out and they seem like they're just being witchy to you and too controlling, that is because they love you and they're really scared and they're doing their best. They're not really trying to hurt you. It's hard. It's just really, really hard to be a parent in this day and age. It's even harder. Vice versa. Parents need to remember it's really hard with all the choices you guys have and the information you have available. It's hard. There's too many options. It's stressful. They don't understand your anxiety. Your parents, for the most part, didn't come from this anxious world you're in. They don't understand it. And so just be compassionate that they didn't have the same experience.
Yeah.
Thank you. Do that, and kids, as students, do that. I've never thought about looking at parent that way. As I was taught that kids are the gifts. They are given gifts as gifts to you, and they are God's children. So treat them that way. Now I am seeing this viewpoint that kids also need to look at the parents the same way. So that's one. You may be a freshman, you may be still a sophomore or a junior or even a senior here for the first time. Please do surround yourself with a community like this. This is very, very, very important. There may be a lot of different things you could do with your life, but this is the best way to do your life, to surround yourself with the people whose primary focus is someone who loves all of us so much that he didn't even care about his own life. It's a epitome of love. And surrounding with people like these who love him, love Jesus, is basically you're getting a lot out of it. You're getting a huge sum of love out of being in communities like this. Please do continue as students. Please do that. And for the parents, I mean, it's exactly vice versa. Please do encourage them, and then if you have to fight with them for them to be in a communities like this, please make sure you emphasize the importance of it to be part of this.
Yeah, just to piggyback on what Joshua said, the most transformative thing that I have seen in our sons' lives is this community. Literally, of everything, when I look back over their lives, this has been the most transformative thing in a positive way. And I would also say something really practical. Just call your parents every now and then.
That's good.
Just tell them you love them and some things that you're thankful for. I remember when I was in college and I realized, gosh, my parents trained me well. And I just called them one evening and thanked them for that. And for parents, I would say, kind of like I said in the beginning, we're closing a chapter in our lives. Grow yourself, try new things. God has other plans for you.
Yeah.
New adventures. So, thanks.
Thank you.
I want to say one more thing. We started writing love letters to our kids when they were real young. And we continue to do that. When we're gone, I want my kids to have a stack of things they can go back and read. And in doing that, we also taught them to love us and write us. And I've got stacks of cards from my kids, and I go back and read their love letters and just remembering things and writing things that they really appreciate. So, yeah, if you've never done that, sit down and write your parents a love letter. And by that, I just mean tell them you love them. It's not just about being thankful. Sometimes it's like, that you love them, because they went through a lot. There was a lot of pain. I just imagine just trying to come from another country and what it's like to move and try to start over with your family. And we do that for our kids. We left everything from California and moved back and came here and started completely over for our kids. We picked the school, we picked the city, we picked everything for them. So, write them love letters, but do thank them, because it really will help you as you rehearse. Yeah. The time they stayed up with you all night. They held your hand. Brianna wrote me in one of hers. Her senior year, she had a bad basketball game. She played basketball, and I used to always say it's just a game, but I was working late that night. I was still consulting, and she came in a little bit later. She looked like death warmed over, and I said, "Are you okay?" And she held up, she'd gotten a traffic ticket. And I mean, after this really bad game, and she was just, I said, "Brianna, the sun will come up tomorrow." And so I waited just a little bit, and I went and just laid on the bed in there. And I just talked, and I just told her about some bad days of my own. And I said, "This seems like such a big deal, but it really isn't. You're okay. We're all okay. What'd you learn? You can think about this tomorrow. This all seems like such a big deal." But that's one of the things she thanked me for, was that night, just to come and lay across the bed with her and just talk and help her to feel better. So it meant a lot to me that she remembered that. So I think probably all of you have one of those times, that time you were in the hospital and your mom or dad sat up with you all night. Tell them, thank them for that.
Yeah. Well, you see why I asked these three? This is really meaningful. So thank you guys so much for being here.